All right, Jeff Pasquino is back for another season helping your fantasy football teams out. If you have a fantasy football question for Jeff Pasquino from thefootballguys.com, send it in right now, 609-403-0973. Hunter is compiling all the listener questions. We will have a segment for Jeff firing off your questions. Fantasy Football with Jeff Pasquino is brought to you by the Piccalilli Inn on Route 206 in Chemung, home of South Jersey's best wings. Which picks does Jeff have this week? Let's get into it as Jeff Pasquino is back for another season of fantasy football. Now, I want to start off with this question. Jeff, welcome back. How are you, pal?
Great to be back, Mike. Yeah. Always a pleasure.
You know, I met Jeff, 15, 20 years ago? How long ago was that?
I think you were on 14 seasons now, so about 15 years in down Lake City at that Roto Bowl draft.
Yeah, we were doing a draft, and there was a guy, John Hansen, who's a fantasy football guy. He gave me a spot in that draft, and sitting next to me was Jeff Pasquino. We started talking, and I said, yeah, I host a radio show. He says, oh, if you ever need a fantasy guy, I'd love to do it, and he's been with us ever since. Now, I'll ask you this question. So last night we had our draft, all right? I'm in so Josh Henning, my producer, says, roll call, anybody here? And I say, I'm here. My pick comes up, and it auto-picks for me. Does the commissioner, is it on the commissioner to pause the draft to make sure that that's the guy that I wanted? Like, if someone auto-picks in the first round, don't you think something's up?
I would think so, especially if you did a roll call, yeah.
Yeah, see? Is the draft tainted?
No. What I'm saying is, shouldn't it be on the players to make sure that they are prepared? It's not on auto pick. Gil should be ready to rock and roll. It's on him that he put himself in such a poor situation.
Sometimes it's the software. So
there you go.
I think first round, you got to manage tightly, yeah.
Yep. If you're the commissioner, you don't want a tainted draft. All right, now that I've won that one, here we go. All right, let's get into this week one. We got tonight, Chiefs and Texans, Thursday Night Football. Make sure if you have players in tonight's game, get them active. Jeff, who are a couple of guys that you need to have in your lineup tonight?
Well, we all know the big players for Kansas City. You got Mahomes, you got Kelsey, you got Hill, but everybody wants to see how the rookie Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to do in the backfield.
He would have been my pick, by the way.
Of course, we all know how Andy Reid manages his running back, so we got to be careful there. Houston side's a little interesting. David Johnson in the backfield now. That's a sleeper guy who can be a running back one this year, probably a third-round prospect if you're still drafting. But the one concern right now is we got Brandon Cooks, who's the new wide receiver one with DeAndre Hopkins trade to Arizona. That's how they got Johnson. Cooks is questionable tonight, so you may be looking at Will Fuller and Randall Cobb as your starting wideouts tonight for Houston. Should be a lot of points. Should be an entertaining game.
All right, let's get to some quarterback questions for Jeff Pasquino from thefootballguys.com. Don't forget, text your questions in, 609-403-0973. I want to start off with, how about Matt Ryan taking on Seattle? There's some interesting expectations for Atlanta. They've got Ridley now in year number 2. They got Julio Jones, a lot of weapons for Ryan. But, he's, I don't want to say declining or getting older, but he's starting to get up there a bit. Is he still on your fantasy radar week one?
He is, but the one thing I like about Atlanta is that their defense is terrible. Now, that usually means the offense is going to throw a lot, score a lot of points. So that's your favorite, Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan rarely gets hurt. So as long as they protect him, he should be putting up a lot of fancy points and be a solid quarterback one this year.
Got to ask you about Brady, new spot. He's down in Tampa. Expectations are huge, but he's at the Dome, although there won't be anybody in there. Brady this week against the Saints.
I like Brady this weekend this year. I think that he, in the late bye, helps him with week 13. You can make a strong argument that this is his best receiving course in his entire career. So we got 2 strong wide receivers, 3 solid tight ends, plenty of talent in the backfield that they're going to rotate through. I like Brady this year. You could have a very solid year.
How about the guy who's replacing Brady in New England, Cam Newton? He's taking on the Dolphins. Is he a fantasy play?
I think he's more of a quarterback, too. I'd like him to run the ball a little bit and move the ball himself, but the word is he's targeting Edelman a lot. They do have some sleepers at wide receiver and tight end, but I really need to see how that offense is gelling. New England is probably going to play a lot of defense, low-scoring games.
Kyler Murray, seems like a lot of people want Murray. He's got a big weapon now.
He does, and they run a big running gun kind of offense out there, and he's a scrambler, so Colin Murray and Josh Allen in Buffalo, both those guys are young prospects that can add a lot of fantasy points because they can run.
Aaron Rodgers, a lot of people would be picking him as one of their top quarterbacks. Where's he fallen on your list?
In the history, he's a quarterback 1. In recent history, he's a quarterback 2. Green Bay is moving away from throwing the ball. They did not get him a wide receiver 2. Defenses are going to shut down Devontae Adams as best they can and force Green Bay to run, which is what they want to do anyway. In fact, there's a solid sleeper running back for Green Bay, second string.
Let's get one more on the quarterbacks. We'll move to the running backs. Josh Allen now has a big weapon. What does that do for him as a fantasy quarterback?
He's got a big arm now. Stephon Diggs can go run and get it. I think they've got good targets out there. You got Josh Brown who can go deep too. They got a good pair of running backs, but Allen can run as well. I think Josh Allen is a later quarterback. Quarterbacks are deep to about 20-ish this year, but Josh Allen is a top 10 quarterback this year.
All right, Jeff Pasquino, footballguys.com. If you have a question for Jeff, 609-403-0973. Let's go over to the running backs here. I was laughing because Dalvin Cook is the guy that I got in the auto pick spot there. What are you seeing for Cook this year, coming back from that injury now that he's a full season back?
That's not a bad pick either. I think with Cook being healthy, you want to get Alexander Madison as his backup because he's one of the top handcuffs and very good talent behind him. Minnesota's another team that wants to run the ball a lot. Kirk Cousins is not throwing much. They lost Diggs. So I think that Dalvin Cook is a top 6, top 7 candidate for a running back, solid running back 1.
So much hype for Josh Jacobs. Will he live up to it in week 1?
I think so. Maybe not week 1. I think week 1's always a little iffy because teams fill out and they have no preseason games. But Josh Jacobs, and I like the Raiders entirely. I think they're one of the dark horses in the AFC. They could make a playoff push.
Who's replacing Gurley in LA? Who should be in your lineup?
Oh, I think you got Cam Akers. Cam Akers is your guy in LA. He's a solid running back too. There's a lot of good rookies that could take over in backfields and lead, but there's no one behind Akers. He's the guy.
What about in Cleveland? Which back should be in your lineup, Chubb or Hunt?
I think Chubb. A lot of people like Hunt. I think they're going to try and get them both carries. Hunt is more of a PPR guy, but I think Chubb is more of a running back 1 workhorse.
You like Gurley now in Atlanta?
Until he breaks down, which could happen by week 2.
Jeff Pasquino, one more running back question before we go over to the wideouts. And what's going on in San Francisco? What's the running back situation there?
Mostert is your guy. He's your touchdown guy. I think they're going to try working Coleman and a few others, but Mostert is the number 1 on the depth chart, and he's going to get most of your fantasy value, solid running back 2.
All right, over to the wideouts. Allen Robinson, he's got poor quarterback play, but does that make you skeptical of him?
It does. I think the weather's going to be tough in Chicago. I think the NFC North is going to be low scoring generally. Allen Robinson is going to put up respectable numbers, but I think he's going to be a wide receiver 1 candidate that's going to disappoint into the wide receiver 2 category, but he's not going to find the end zone much.
All right, Odell Beckham. People were hoping for big things from him. Where is he on the fantasy spectrum now?
He's moved down the pecking order too. I'm shying on the Browns. I just don't trust Cleveland. I think Odell Beckham's still their top target, but I think he's more of a wide receiver too.
What does the move to Buffalo mean for Diggs?
Diggs is a great guy in best ball. I think he can go get the ball deep. I think he can put up another 1,000-yard season, but I think Buffalo's going to want to run the ball a little bit more. I would be much more comfortable getting Diggs as a wide receiver 3 or a lower-end wide receiver 2.
DK Metcalf, he jumped on the scene late last year. Is he going to have a full season now?
I think he is, and I think that both him and Lockett are going to be solid wide receiver 2s with upside each week.
All right, one more for Jeff before we get the listener questions in. 609-403-0973. This is going to be kind of an all-encompassing question. What do you make of the first-round wide receivers this year, those guys that were all drafted in the NFL draft this year?
I think CeeDee Lamb is probably a top guy. I've heard he's doing fantastic in Dallas. Still laments that the Eagles didn't move up on that, but we talked about that another day. Jerry Jeudy is a nice guy. Ruggs is a good guy, too, out in Vegas. I think we've got some good talent, and I think we're going to see a lot of young players across the league come out and perform. Everybody's saying that they're not going to be able to adapt, but I think the lack of the noise is going to help them. I also think that the lack of preseason helps them because that's kind of the way college goes.
All right, let's get to some texters' questions. Bob wants to – he's got a scenario here with Dak Prescott versus the Rams or Big Ben versus the Giants.
I think I like Big Ben versus the Giants. I also like having that hammer on a Monday night game. I think Big Ben, if he comes back, going to throw the ball around. I think he's the guy I'd go.
Keenan Allen or Cooper Kupp?
Close one. I think I like Keenan Allen this week. I think he's the wide receiver one for that offense. He's definitely the guy I want to get out there.
Aaron Rodgers versus the Vikings or Kyler Murray versus the 49ers?
Kyler Murray for sure. I think he's got a lot more upside. And like I said, Green Bay wants to run the ball.
Out of these three, he only has a spot for one. Sutton, Ruggs, or Justin Jefferson?
Jefferson is a solid guy long-term, so is Sutton, but I think Ruggs is a true wide receiver one.
How about McLaurin or Ruggs?
McLaurin in the PPR, Ruggs in the touchdown league.
Okay, this texter needs two for his PPR. Melvin Gordon, Edelman, and McLaurin.
Edelman and McLaurin. Gordon's got a little bit of question marks, and Philip Lindsay, they still want to work in.
All right, and Joey D needs one wide receiver and one flex guy out of these four. Mostert, Mark Ingram, Jarvis Landry, and Deshaun Jackson.
I like D-Jax as comeback player of the year this year, and he loves to beat up Washington. So there's your wide receiver.
All right,
Jeff, go ahead. I go Mostert with my flex.
All right, Jeff Pasquino, footballguys.com. Don't forget, set your lineups, get them in tonight. Before we let Jeff go, Jeff, who are some sleepers and under-the-radar guys you're playing this week?
Well, I'm going to throw out some rookies that I'm keeping an eye on. I think they have a lot of upside. Zach Moss in Buffalo, A.J. Dillon in Green Bay. I want to see how they work him in. I think he's going to be the star by the end of the year. James Robinson is going to lead the backfield in Jacksonville. That doesn't sound fancy, but, hey, starting running backs mean a lot. And I also want to see CeeDee Lamb and Jerry Jeudy do at wide receiver. And the one guy that is the two guys I'm watching are Laviska Shenault for Jacksonville, tough one to say, and Brian Edwards for Las Vegas. Could be on your waiver wire. Could be wide receiver two candidates come week 2 to pick up.
All right, keep your eyes on all the picks. And, of course, Jeff Pasquino will be back with week 2 next week as we do the fantasy segment with Jeff Pasquino each Thursday here for the 2020 season. Let's hope we get a full season in. Jeff Pasquino, footballguys.com. Thank you, Jeff. Good luck to you.
Thank you, guys. Good luck and enjoy the games.
All right, as always, the Fantasy Picks with Jeff Pasquino. It's brought to you by the Piccalilli Inn. Be sure to call the Pick for your game day favorites like their award-winning wings, ears, and tails. Check them out online at Piccalilli.com. Love those wings at the Piccalilli, man. That place is fantastic. All the way out there on 206. It's worth the drive, and we're happy to have them as part of this year's Piccalilli Fantasy Picks with Jeff Pasquino.